open-minded people wherever you live. Those open-minded people. That's so true, because there seems to be fewer and fewer open-minded people in the world. But those who are open-minded will soon recognize, they will all end up recognizing the incredible hypocrisy of international global Zionism, the incredible hypocrisy of Israel, the incredible hypocrisy of the mainstream media. And the first subject we want to bring up today, and by the way, it is Fabulous Friday because Mark Collett of Great Britain is with us, and he is an incredible voice for human rights, the rights of the European people, but of all people. He's an incredible voice for peace in the Middle East and elsewhere in our own countries, because we know that massive ethnic cleansing of populations and massive immigration of very different people into different people's lands against the will of those people leads to conflict, leads to hatred and violence. And this is persistent all over the world. If you really want peace, if you really want love, if you want brotherhood, then you'll respect the rights of all people to preserve their own individual heritages, their values, their culture, their way of life. Red Ice, which is a very, very, very fine operation, wonderful media operation, true news, really, that interview leading people around the world. I've been interviewed, many other people, Mark Collett, many other people. They have been deplatformed off of Google, Google, that's right, Google. Google is run by open Zionists who collaborate with the ADL, the Anti-Defamation League of B'nai B'rith, which is a subgroup, was created as a subgroup of the B'nai B'rith, which is an organization, you can look it up on the internet, it's an organization that's fighting for, quote, the interests of the Jewish people. But if Red Ice simply wants to preserve European rights and heritage, and they do it in a very sane way, a very legitimate, non-violent way, a non-hateful way even, they talk about some of the crimes that have been committed against the European people in the name of equality and human rights that are really, again, hypocritical. And they've been taken off. 330,000 subscribers to YouTube. Let's bring on Mark Collett right now to weigh in on this. I know you're very familiar with Red Ice, as I am. They're really wonderful people. They're decent people. They're nonviolent in every way. If anything, they've been a voice for peace. They've really been opposed to these wars in the Middle East. They've been opposed to this incredible censorship of human freedom, free speech, which is the fundamental human right of all, because without free speech, there are no other rights, because if they can suppress your freedom of speech, then they can do anything to you. They can murder you. They can imprison people. They can take away their livelihoods. They could put them into poverty. They can torture them. Free speech is the reason why, Mark, and the reason why free speech is the First Amendment to the Constitution and our Bill of Rights is because our founding fathers in America realized that without freedom of speech, no human right is safe in the world. And yet this is the first casualty of this massive Zio-controlled media around the world. It's freedom of speech, because they know when they're lying to us and when they're repressing people and not allowing people to get both sides of every political question or social question, that is the beginning of the end and destruction of every kind and type of human right that we all revere. Mark, welcome to the show.
Hello, it's great to be here. It's just a shame we don't have something to celebrate today. It's a shame we're having to talk about this kind of thing again. Two absolutely wonderful people, two good friends of mine, Henrik and Lana, two people who have been tireless in the pursuit of truth, who have built the most impressive nationalist media startup in the whole world. Red Ice TV and Red Ice Radio are absolutely incredible. And Lana and Henrik, they are such amazing people. They're such family people. They've got a wonderful little boy. They're great parents. This is their business. This is their livelihood. And they've built an amazing community. Over 330,000 people were subscribed to Red Ice TV when it was taken down yesterday without warning. No warnings were given. Henrik just woke up. He went to his computer and that was it. His channel had disappeared. His livelihood had disappeared. His business had disappeared. And with that, the security for his partner, for his child, for his little boy. This is absolutely scandalous. Absolutely scandalous. Because Red Ice, they never pushed hate speech. They never pushed terrorism. They never pushed violence. They had sensible people on their channel talking about sensible solutions to huge problems that affect the whole of Western civilization. And they did so in a very, very polite and upstanding way. In fact, I've never really met anyone in the movement who've had a bad thing to say about Red Ice or Lana and Henrik. They're absolutely wonderful people. They've been on my show, I think 3 times. They've hosted so many people. And I used to love their output. I used to love watching their content, and seeing that disappear, it's absolutely terrible. But it just goes to show it doesn't matter how big you are. It doesn't matter how much you attempt to stay within their guidelines. When they want you gone, you will be gone. And the really scandalous thing is, Red Ice has been going for years. Now, when they signed up to YouTube's terms and agreements, they signed up to a binding contract. Now, YouTube seemed to have broken that contract because YouTube constantly changed their terms and conditions, what you can say, what you can't say. Well, that to me is really unfair. That's a really unfair way to do business. Because if you sign up to one thing and you put your whole platform, you build your whole business around that contract you signed, around those set of rules, and then somebody just decides, well, I'm changing all those rules tomorrow, so your entire business now is completely under threat. That is scandalous. That is evil. And to threaten a family's income like this, to threaten good people, it just shows how sick the people at YouTube really are. And I just hope and pray they'll get their channels back, because we saw other great YouTubers, people like Way of the World, people like The Iconoclast, people like James Alsop lose their channels earlier this year. Now, Way of the World and The Iconoclast, they got their channels back. Thank goodness they got their channels back. They're back there producing excellent content. But unfortunately, James Alsop didn't. Now, James Alsop had about 250,000 subscribers. And he too, he's married, he's got a child, there's a new family again there. Another young man who has been denied his income, who's been denied a living, who has had his entire life's work just crushed at the switch of a button. Absolutely terrible. I mean, in a very real way, this is the destruction of lives. This is not just a free speech issue, but it's stopping people from living. It's stopping people from carrying out their work. And that's what they really want to do to us all, isn't it? They want to take away any form of funding that we might have. They want to take away any platform we have. They will not stop at anything until we're broken down, until we've got nothing left, until we're all penniless, isolated, with nowhere where we can speak our minds. And that is why this cause is so important. So I urge all of you, every listener here today, if you are on Twitter, if you are on Facebook, tweet at Team YouTube. Tell them what you think. Leave comments on Team YouTube's Facebook page. Tell them what you think. Complain. Write to them. Ring them if you've got a number. But do something. Put some pressure on. And hopefully these wonderful people will wake up tomorrow and see that their business has been restored.
There's only one way I can really respond to this or describe this event of their deplatforming, and that's just simply evil. When you think about it, there are hundreds of thousands of people around the world who even celebrate the massacres of the Palestinians or the Israelis shooting down, the Palestinians that simply want to go back home where they were born. We have a whole state of Israel, which is founded in ethnically cleansing 600,000 people from their homes, their businesses, their farms. They've tortured, according to human rights groups in Israel, Jewish groups in Israel, they've tortured hundreds of thousands of people in their dungeons, in their prisons, literally. They have waged countless wars. They have supported, along with the Zionist globalists, the invasion of Syria. This is a big issue right now because we see some of the results of this right now in the Turkish invasion that's going on in Syria and the Kurds and so forth, because they wanted this war. They wanted hundreds of thousands of people to die. You think they're getting deplatformed? Hell no. The YouTube channel itself, the guy that's head of it now is Max Brand, who is a Jewish Zionist from Israel, and he controls YouTube for Israel, but not just Israel, but also the West Bank, Egypt, Jordan, the entire Middle East, and Russia. Now, these are all countries and peoples who are viewed as the, quote, the enemy of Israel, because the Russians didn't go along with the support of ISIS and Al-Qaeda, for instance, in the Syrian invasion. So here we have YouTube cooperating and supporting unbelievably wars. Look, I said this yesterday, and this is an important thing. This was when I was on with Mark Dankoff, a very fine commentator and researcher, and we were talking about the Iraq War. And here we have a situation. The other day, Tulsi Gabbard was on the Democratic debate, and they were so critical of her because she says, we got to stop these endless wars. And I said that, I wish Tulsi, they didn't give her a chance to speak, so if she had had more time, maybe she would have said this, because she said this before. But the New York Times went on a vicious attack on her, calling her a Russian agent or something like that. When the New York Times is actually owned by 8 Zionist Jews who are very radically devoted to the state of Israel, to Jewish interests worldwide. That's a fact. And the New York Times was directly responsible for the Iraq War, which did what? Well, first off, even before that time, they did sanctions against Iraq, which caused at least, according to even 60 Minutes, which is a Jewish publication, caused at least 600,000 lives of babies that died because they couldn't get antibiotics when they got sick and couldn't get decent diet. 600,000 children died from this. And it was all lies. The whole weapons of mass destruction thing was a total lie. Even the New York Times later had to admit that. But they drove on the war. They drove on the war, telling Americans that they were a threat, telling Americans that maybe they were getting yellow cake uranium, which is a big damn lie. It was all a Zionist war lie. And it's cost not only hundreds of thousands of lives of the people of Iraq and neighboring societies, and displacement of people, and horrible suffering and wounds and wars, physical pain and suffering. It's also done what? It's also cost 1 million American veterans who served in Afghanistan and served in these wars promoted by the neocons in Iraq, who now have terrible burns and disfigurement from these wars, who lost their eyesight or even their limbs, even their ability to have children anymore because of the damage, and traumatic brain injuries, according to the Pentagon, are now 400,000 people. And these people who support these things, they're not being banned. The New York Times is not going to be banned from Twitter, even though they literally admit that their own journalists, their own pundits, and the owners of the New York Times had a policy that was a lie, that had Americans go fight and die for a lie, that had Iraqis by the hundreds of thousands die for these lies, which were not true. There were no weapons of mass destruction. I mean, this is the height of evil. And this is why I will never quit this fight. I had a friend of mine, I was talking to a very close friend this morning, and, I said, well, why don't you just retire? You can't, you just can't. It's so hard. It's so stressful. It's so difficult talking about this every day and dealing with these insanities and these horrors every day, and the future horrors they have planned for our children, by the way, and the future horrors they have planned for the planet, by the way. And I answered her, I said, well, it's very simple. As long as I'm going to be able to breathe, I will fight. But as you said, Mark, so it's so important to understand that the people who run the Hollywood media, which, by the way, wash our people with blood, degeneracy, pro-drugs for our kids, right? Pro-war for these wars that have been so devastating to us, controlling politics. These people that run the media, they all make a living. And they make millions of dollars promoting their lies and their propaganda. And that's one way you control freedom of speech, right? Is because to put out good content and to put out good research, to be able to work all day on your articles like I do academically, or my books, or these kind of things. It takes having some sort of income. It takes some sort of return on it. But if they can suppress your books, if they can suppress your credit cards, if they can keep you from even reaching people, even putting out and disseminating your stuff, that's in effect a way to ban books, to suppress books, to burn books. It's even worse than burning books, isn't it, Mark? Because today, they not only do they burn your books, like my books are burned when they go to Canada and other countries, they not only burn books, but they literally keep people from even knowing these books exist by the control of the search engine. So this is and we got two guys. Why would you, two people, Brin, right, and Page, two Zionists, and they totally control the Google and the Alphabet father company of this. That's how they structured the means of the company. Two guys control what 92% of the people will even find when they search Google. With 2% control whether or not a website with massive support. My videos have been suppressed. My videos, by the way, have 98%, some of them 98% positive ratings by people all over the world in every country, not just white countries, not just European countries, but African countries, South American countries, and yours have been the same way too. Yet they suppress these videos. They don't let them be rated. They restrict them. They ban them now for most of the European countries. I'm totally banned. I mean, this is the kind of stuff that they do. And this is how they are able to restrict freedom of speech, while at the same time they promote these wars which kill countless numbers of people, including your countrymen in Great Britain who died in these insane wars like the Iraq War as well. Your thoughts?
Well, I want to say, when people talk about book burning, they're obviously talking about what the National Socialists did in Germany. And it always makes me laugh when people go, they burn the books, they burn the books. They were burning pornography. They were burning manuals that were to be used to indoctrinate children with transgender madness. They were burning LGBT propaganda. They weren't burning books in the sense of textbooks or legitimate ideas. They were burning material that was going to be used to infect the minds of impressionable young children. Now, what they're doing here is nothing like book burning. What they're doing here is completely deplatforming and suppressing a group of people who are trying to stand up against their own replacement. We are standing up against the replacement and displacement of those of European descent in their ancestral homelands. Effectively, we are standing against white genocide. These people are thus aiding and abetting white genocide. They are helping those who push genocidal policies by suppressing the good people who want to push back against those genocidal policies. Now, this is very clear, and I want to make it absolutely crystal clear to anyone who it isn't clear to so far. This is a huge double standard, because on YouTube there are people who are members of Antifa who are calling for violence. There are people who are celebrating political violence against their opponents. Now, if you look up terrorism, the definition of terrorism is those who want to affect the political system or bring about political change through violence or the threats of violence. That is terrorism. Yet there are people on YouTube who are members of Antifa who are calling for physical attacks on people like myself, people like David Duke, people like Lana and Henrik, and they are not being deplatformed. There are literal terrorists on YouTube who are not being deplatformed. And I remember at one point there were ISIS recruitment videos on YouTube, and YouTube were doing very, very little about it. There are videos on YouTube by gangster rappers here in the UK. We don't call them gangster rappers, we call them grime stars. Rap music, there's a subgenre of rap music in the UK called grime. And grime, these rappers are...
At least that's a pretty evocative and truthful term describing it. Grime.
It is. And these people are waving waving knives. They are rapping about stabbing one another. They are talking about how they want to kill their rivals. And these videos are up on YouTube. So again, you've got this thing. I've been on Red Ice. I've talked about knife crime in London. And people like me, people like Red Ice, we're under threat constantly for talking about knife crime. Yet the people carrying out the knife crime are producing rap videos that are on YouTube glorifying knife crime. You know, people who want to hold peaceful political meetings that are in opposition to genocidal policies are being deplatformed. Whereas those who stand outside those meetings, throwing bottles, throwing bricks, attacking people, following people back to stations so they can beat them up or harass them, those people are allowed to operate on YouTube. And you can see here that this isn't about curtailing terrorism. This isn't about stopping people who threaten political violence. This has nothing to do with fairness or producing a balanced platform which is open for everyone. This is about the political censorship of people who hold ideas that the establishment, the media, the press, and the big tech companies don't like. This is censorship of the worst kind. It's censorship of people, not people who are trying to influence children, not people who are trying to mix up toddlers, not people who are trying to commit violent acts, not people who are calling for war or the bombing of foreign countries, not people who are glorifying knife crime, but it's the censorship of people who stand in peaceful opposition to all of those things.
Now, let me give an example of this, because I talked about this actually 5 years ago when it first came out, but it's still going. I'll give you a perfect example of this. There is a black music star named Nicki Minaj. Of course, she does whatever her Zio handlers want her to do. She does a video, there's lots of others that are just as bad, called Anaconda. And this is a video about a very disgusting individual who is singing about her cocaine habit and doing tricks, prostitution, and doing all sorts of sexual things, different types of oral sex and regular sex, right, with her boyfriend, and shooting people with her pistol and all this stuff. I mean, it's nothing more than gangsterism, sexual depravity, disgusting degradation. And this video has been promoted by YouTube, right? And they've had they're close to 1 billion views. And I can promise you that I bet you half of those views have been teenagers, young impressionable boys and girls, saying this is the way you're supposed to act. You know, she's playing with a gun. She's acting like she's taking her gun, and she's busting a cap on somebody that's interrupting her drug trade. And she's so cool, and she's so rich, and she's got, gold chains around her neck. This stuff, not only is it not suppressed, it is actually promoted. And putting out this video, the Hollywood producers who don't need any more cash, they make billions of dollars really in the economy promoting their crap because it's promoted by the mainstream media, which makes stars out of people like Nicki Minaj, right? Not only is it not suppressed, it's promoted, and it makes them more billions of dollars. But my God, if you have a person like yourself or myself saying, wait a second, I mean, I campaigned all over the world against the Iraq war. I said it was a war based on lies. I was right? I said that the threats about the Jewish centers were not, I said, I think this is really coming from Israel because it's a means they have to protect and promote the ADL and to promote the idea that Jews are being victims, rather than the idea that the Palestinians are being the victims. And maybe we're being the victims of this control when they get us in all these wars, right? And I turned out I was right. And it's still talked about as a hate crime, right? That this was a hate crime. They used the figures of the hundreds of schools which got threats of bombing the schools, Jewish schools or Jewish synagogues or whatever, emptying, and then they showed the children crying every day, right? And it's terrible. Those kids shouldn't have been having to cry. But the source of it, was a Zionist in Israel, probably the Mossad. This was what they call, it's a false flag type, an operation to get certain, friendship and support for these things. So you have Nicki Minaj, right? You've got these other people that are committing horrible crimes. You have suppression of those who believe in peace, who believe in human rights. And I tell you one thing, Mark, in a way, this is very depressing to know that Red Ice has been deplatformed, and it's very depressing what they do to me and what they're doing to you and they're doing to other people. But one thing it tells you as well, folks, is that we're really making progress. People are learning the truth. They're getting desperate to suppress us. Because just like what we just talked about the last 10, 15 minutes on the show, if anybody who can actually think for themselves, and it may be a small minority of people in the world that can do that still, because we're so, throttled by this massive onrush, this breaking of dam of propaganda and lies above it. But anybody who can possibly think in the world knows that what you said here today and what I said here today is truth. That we have a media that's promoting every sort of degeneracy, every sort of violence, drug use, sexual depravity. And this is even being promoted to our children. And these people are being promoted by YouTube. But anybody who's a voice for peace, even Tulsi Gabbard was called a white nationalist, or she was called to be a Russian agent simply because she said, we don't need these foreign wars. We don't need these wars. We're doing wrong in the Middle East, not only for these other countries, but for our own people. I was in the Iraq war, she said. And I saw my comrades, had their brains blown out, had lost their, brain damage, lost their limbs for these lies and these wars. I mean, this is the greatest evil the world's ever seen, folks, and that's why we got a world of war. And even Bernie Sanders promoted as the peace candidate, but Bernie Sanders is actually a guy that's promoted all these Zionist wars in the Middle East. By the way, he voted for these wars. He completely threw the Palestinians under the bus, yet he promotes himself like a peace conference or a peace candidate, when the truth is that he is a vile Zionist promoter. He's just a Zio-commie rather than the Zio-cons or the neocons. They got Zio-commies and they got Zio-neocons. These are the people who rule, and they're not giving us a world of peace and love and brotherhood. They're giving us a world of blood, murder, and these are real lives that are being taken. There's nothing in your videos that have caused any sort of violence. There's nothing in your videos. You defend human rights. You defend the idea that a child should not be beaten in his newly diversified school, that he should be able to walk on the streets without facing this massively increased crime rate in Great Britain or in Europe, or this massive effort to destroy people, which is supposed to be a human rights crime. That's all your videos do. That's all your work does. But you're being deplatformed. You're being suppressed, just as I am. You're being suppressed not because you're trying to take away human rights, not because you're trying to hurt people. You're trying to protect people. You're trying to protect human freedoms and human rights. And this, to me, what can be more evil than that? Nicki Minaj, 1 billion views through our kids, promoting a woman who's promoting drug use, making money by prostitution, selling drugs, capping people with a gun, promoting gun violence, and then these bastards dare to tell us that, wow, oh my God, we got gun violence in America. It's this kind of media and these kind of blood-drenched movies that are the ones that are causing this violence, not only in the Western world, but across the whole world.
I think the other big cause of the violence is the way these people attack the family. These people remove positive male role models from the home. They demonize the strong male role model. They tell young children, not to listen to their fathers. They undermine the family structure. The divorce rate has risen. The number of children who live with only one parent has risen. And all of this leave children with this huge void in their lives. And then they end up looking up to the people that you're talking about. And again, when you look at the sort of content you see on YouTube, when you look at the kind of content you see pushed out by the press and the mainstream media, so much of it is aimed at undermining the family unit. So much of it is aimed at mixing up children, at sexually mixing people up so that they're all not mentally with it anymore, so that they can't form proper relationships. So when they do form relationships, they break down. So much sexualized material is poured into the head of everyone. And they're all watching soap operas as well, so they're hypersexualized. And they're watching these soap operas which teach them, the best way is to gossip. The best way is to cheat on your partner. Everyone's doing it. Everyone on the street is doing it. They're all sleeping with each other. And of course, over the years, the family unit's been destroyed. The strong male role model has been removed from the home. Children no longer have a father figure. And when they no longer have the strong male role model and the father figure, they no longer have the person that imparts the discipline, the order, and the rules in their life. So young people, all of a sudden, have no compass. They have no genuine, decent morality. And there's people like us who are talking about morality. People like us who are talking about a moral compass, and that's being taken away. We are attacked. We are vilified. We are deplatformed simply for standing as a moral alternative to the sewer that has been created by those who run the media, by those who run the press, by those within the political establishment, by those within the education system. And really what you have here is a group of very, very evil people who are hell-bent on destroying the whole of Western society. And those people are now in positions of such power that they intend to prevent anyone who stands in opposition to them from even speaking, from even running a business, from even existing. Our very existence is being snuffed out simply because we are brave enough to stand up against our own genocide and the moral and genetic destruction of our people.
You discuss this so eloquently and articulately in your book. Tell them about your book and where they can find it, because you discuss this subject at length and with incredible persuasion in your book. Tell the audience where they can find your book.
You can go to my website, which can be found at www.thefallofwesternman.com, and my book is actually available for free. It's available as a free ebook, so you can download that. You can, it's got a free license, so you can send it out to all your friends, your family, your work colleagues. You can email it to whoever you want. You can also buy it in hardback and paperback if you want to make a contribution. But the whole book is about the way that we as a people have been mentally manipulated into this situation. It's not a book where I blame non-white people. It's not a book where I lay the blame at immigrants. It's a book where I slowly and methodically go through the different ways that we as a people have been attacked. Our communities have been destroyed. Our people have been atomized, but most importantly, how the family unit, the cornerstone of our civilization, has been relentlessly chipped away at until we've got where we are today. And most of their attacks have come through the media, the press, the Hollywood, the music industry. These have been mental attacks upon our people. They have been attacks that were intended to damage us mentally. That TV, the media, the press, Hollywood, they are poisoning our minds. They are poisoning our children's minds. And it's about time that we kicked those people out of our homes and recentered our morality.
Yeah, I heartily recommend to all of you to read Mark's incredible book. It's a magnificent piece of work. And I also want to remind people as well, there's still some people listening to this maybe who have not read my books. They're in many languages all over the world. And when I set out as a young man to write my books, when I was learning about, the racial realities of the world, the fact that people are different, and that's a good thing. And they have a right to be different. And every people's got a right to preserve their human rights, their heritage. And I outline this, and I talk about and I show how our people have been brainwashed by a controlled media to hate themselves, and if they're European, while at the same time promoting Jewish ethnocentrism and the Jewish ethno-state of Israel. It's a truly supremacist state. And so my books are available as well. And when I was a young kid, I started out with the goal, Mark, of writing a book about these subjects to really go down to the very depths of the racial question from the standpoint of biology, from physiology, from psychology, from civil rights, real civil rights, what was really going on, and then go into the Jewish question and really talk about the basis for what we're talking about here and the realities of the hypocrisy of the Zionists, for instance. And then it also has a lot of biography in it, so it's a kind of a moving discussion of my life and the wild turns that my life has taken and the interesting stories that I think will really animate almost anyone. And so I set out to write a book that I wanted to read, a book that really went through the whole question and made it personal, gave a narrative of it, and I accomplished that in my books. And so I urge you to get those free. You can listen to my book. It's 40 hours of fascinating listening that you can do when you're jogging or when you're driving or when you're going to work out or whatever. You can get it free, folks, and you can get downloads of it free. And if you want to help us by buying a book, that's fine too, or making a contribution. But those are free. And I would say a good start, because this book is a lot shorter and it's more succinct and it's right up to the latest moment. I read his book first. And then also then go to my books if you've not read them yet, and give you the basic understanding and a reference book that you can turn to whenever you want to get the full understanding, whenever you delve into these subjects. So, Mark, let's talk a little bit.
I just want to echo that before we go on. I just want to echo that. My Awakening is one of the best books I've ever read. I would say it's one of the top 3 books that I've read in my life. And the great thing about My Awakening is I actually listened to the audio version, and the audio version is actually read by David himself, so it makes it even more personal. And it really must have been a Herculean effort for you to read a book that's that large and to read it so clearly, so calmly, and in such a wonderful manner. It really does make it a much more personal experience, and the autobiographical sections really do come to life when you hear you reading them. And I really recommend that everyone tracks down a copy, whether you prefer to read it or listen to it as an audiobook. It really is a masterpiece.
And even though I'm a victim of so much hate from most of YouTube and certainly all the networks and the media and the mainstream media, anybody who reads this book, I challenge you, those of you who think they have this impression of what I am or who I am or what I believe, I guarantee you, if you read this book with an open mind, you actually read what I say, what I propose, the facts I use, and the way I express myself, you're not going to find a scintilla of hatred or repression or violence or anything like that. This is a book really about human rights, fundamental human rights that I believe in, that I'm working for and fighting for. And yeah, sometimes, Mark, it's very difficult being a revolutionary in these times of universal deceit. And there is, it's a lot of depressing things. We see the degradation of our people every day. We see videos, again, like Nicki Minaj going out to our young children, sometimes 8, 9, 10 years old, watching this, right? Anaconda, and promoting drug use and violence and shooting people and, total degeneracy and destructiveness and prostitution and sexual license. And I guarantee you a lot of those people, and we see these things, and it makes you just want to cry for our kids. That so many kids, and you think about so many kids. One other subject, when you were telling us a moment ago about, how that they're really trying to degrade and harm kids even today in the world, I just think about another good example of this. This is a forbidden subject, and it's called hate speech, to talk about it. But just look at the LGBT stuff and the pro-homosexual stuff. Now, here's a fact, which we all know. There are tens of millions, in fact, there's been hundreds of millions of kids worldwide, including young men. And of course, there's obviously been molestation of young girls too. But even in the modeling industry, they try to sexualize young kids. It's just disgusting. And they do the same thing to young males. Now, we know that homosexual predators are a real problem for young men in the world, not just white men, black, yellow, anywhere in the world. Homosexuals, you have this, in fact, you can see it. Almost every homosexual organization is advocating today to lower the age of consent. See, the age of consent generally is the same for males and females, so it's 17 or 18 years old. They're trying to lower it. A lot of these homosexual groups are openly trying to lower it to 12 for young boys. That way, if the homosexual seduces the young boy, right, puts his arm around them usually in a fatherless home where it gives them direction, and then seduces them and then sodomizes and makes these kids do these horrific things, that they can get away with it. They can say, well, he consented and the age of consent is lower. And every homosexual, if they didn't want this, to be able to do it. So when the young kids, we have a media that's basically in every school now, and this is in the UK, it's in America, it's in Canada, it's in Australia. Every school now teaches young kids that homosexuality is perfectly okay. It's not a problem. Yeah, and if you're a young boy of 8 or 9 or 10 or 12 years old, you're going to get this propaganda. It's okay if somebody's a gay. Maybe you're gay. So there's nothing wrong with it. If this doesn't help these pedophiles who have, again, damaged, harmed, hurt, and a lot of them have killed, too, because there's been a lot of murder and abuse of these kids. I mean, it's horrible to think about what these homosexuals do in terms of the sexual things they do to these kids. This is horrible. I mean, this can make you cry to think about it in terms of this suffering that these kids suffer from these pedophiles and these homosexual pedophiles, as well as, any man that would, address or would harm a young girl as well. But the problem is, you see, that generally speaking, men are kept away, from the young, girls that they want to predator upon, they want to abuse. But when you have a homosexual who's not prevented from being in the Boy Scouts, who have this great fascination for the young male, then you're putting these predators with their prey. And when you put a society that says to these young kids that, oh, it's perfectly all right, maybe you're homosexual. And a lot of these kids are even pre-puberty. They don't even know what they are. They don't even have any hairs on their private parts. I mean, they don't even understand this, where they're perfect to be having this older male to be abused and molested. And it's unbelievable what's going on. And yet this has been a weapon. It's been an open door that helps homosexuals seduce young males. And this is happening to tens, in fact, hundreds of millions across the world. And this is another good example of the ultimate evil of the media. And if you say one word against this, then they say, oh, well, you're keeping love. These people are just trying to be loving, or whatever, when you have children being sodomized by these insane, evil people. And we have a media that is collaborating in the sodomization and this abuse of our young children. It's just absolutely insane. This is the evil that we have in terms of the mainstream media.
Yeah, you're so right. And you say that is their argument. Their argument is this is love. Love is love. You can't go against love. And all of it is just a slippery slope, not towards love, but to the legalization of paedophilia. It's absolutely scandalous. It's Sodom and Gomorrah stuff. It's not.
It's beyond that. I think it's beyond it. I think even in Sodom and Gomorrah, I think most people would say this is evil stuff, but the evil stuff now is the mainstream media, right? Which is going into the homes of every young kid and telling them, oh, it's okay if some guy wants to, to have intercourse with you, in an unnatural place, or for them to abuse you. That's perfectly normal. Don't worry about that. It's okay. I mean, it's literally empowering the homosexual predators to hurt our young boys, and for that matter, girls. We find a lot of more even lesbian activity that does that against young girls who also are seeking them. And you often find these stars, all lesbians, and you look at their partners, they're far, far younger. Some of them are just little girls, basically. I mean, this is evil. But this is a good example of what really is happening in our society. And yes, it's depressing. But guys, I say to you, everybody listening out there, okay, yes, cry a tear. Think about what they're doing to our people, but don't get depressed and helpless and frozen in your sadness or your depression. Get angry and realize the way you're going to remedy this is by standing up and telling the truth about what's going on. It's not going to be in violence either. That's not going to do it, because all the media does with violence is just it demonizes you who are opposed to this kind of predator. However, probably any human being would think if somebody, did this horrible thing to a child, raped a little baby or a child or a young boy or a young girl, that they would deserve, a corporal punishment, so to speak, or physical punishment like the law used to do. They used to give the death penalty for that kind of behavior. And I think most people even agree with that. Of course, it's in the court of law. But anybody that goes and does something violent about this, all that does is give the media one more opportunity, because any crime or any violence against a homosexual predator or any sort of sexual predator would be called, oh, that's the greatest of evil. You see how bad these heterosexuals are, right? Or these homophobes are. And so I'm telling you, folks, the way you fight this is stand up and doing what you're doing right now, Mark, and what I'm doing right now is tell the truth, which everybody somewhere deep inside of them knows is right. What you're saying and I'm saying here is certainly the moral right attitude that every true human being with true human rights and cares about humanity and cares about our children would agree with.
Well, I agree, and I just want to say a huge thank you to you for having me on the show today. It's been a really, really great show, but I just want to remind everyone, we've talked about so many important things today, but don't forget to go and help Lana and Henrik any way you can. Support Red Ice TV, support Red Ice Media, support Red Ice Radio. They still have their backup channel active. You can still subscribe to that. They are still online with their main website, their website, where they host their own material. And they are still on Twitter. They are still on Facebook. I'm sure at times like this, something as small as just sending a message of support or, subscribing to them or following them on Twitter or Facebook. Small gestures make a big difference at times like this. So please, we have to be better than our enemies. We have to be a real community. And at times like this, we have to come together and we have to have each other's backs. So please, if you get a chance this weekend, do something to show these wonderful people your support. And thank you for having me on today.
Thanks, Mark, and I agree, and everybody knows that we've been facing financial problems too, but I'm going to tell all of you one thing. I'm going to ask you to do one thing today. And even if you were going to make a contribution to us today, forget it. Don't do it. Right now, they need encouragement. They need support, both financial and moral. Send them an email. Go to the Red Ice websites. Give Henrik and Lana your support, your good wishes. Send them a few bucks. Support them. Don't send money to me today. Go to them. Support their work. Because these people, we do have to stand together. We have to work together. We have to support each other. And I urge that to everyone. And also, I just want to make a closing comment or two today that is so vital. I want all of you, every listener, wherever you are in the world, whether you're European or not, I want every listener out there to understand that the things that we promote here on this program, the things that we promote on our websites, both myself, Mark Collett, and Red Ice, is really the height of morality. The establishment in this world is the height of immorality, of human suffering, of tyranny, lack of freedom, and of death. The death of these massive, endless wars that never stop. Our side was not in favor of the insanity of the First World War or the Second World War, which cost 100 million lives. Our side was not in favor of the Iraq War or any of these wars for Israel or the invasion of Syria by ISIS, where people told us the real enemy was Assad and the Syrians, which was a secular government that had every kind of group inside the government, which the people of Syria supported, who were invaded by ISIS and Al-Qaeda. And Americans were told, we've got to sanction Syria. No, folks. The Iraq war was evil. It was an evil not just against the Iraq people and the lies they said about Iraq. And the same thing is true of Afghanistan. It was a war against us. It was a war against humanity. It was a war against the West. And because of these wars, we had ISIS, in fact, come to power, which Israel supported, and the neocons supported, the neo-commies supported, and our Saudi Arabian allies, quote unquote, supported. Folks, understand. My last word to you today is simply understand. Standing up for your rights and heritage and the rights of all people on this earth is the moral thing to do. Morality and justice and freedom and human rights is on our side of this equation. The media, the establishment, makes us sick, is depraved, makes us psychologically ill, is damaging not only ourselves. It's the enemy of the European people, but the enemy of all people on the earth. And it's time for a true worldwide revolution against the ultra-racists who want to subvert all of humanity to support the most racist entity on the planet that truly is racist in the sense of trying to suppress, exploit, harm, and enslave the rest of humanity. I love you, folks. Back again on Monday. Until then, keep thinking free and go to Red Ice and give them some support right now. Thanks so much, folks. See you on Monday.
In America, offering a complete line of highest quality food products and an amazing variety of 100% organic food storage products. It's called Numana.com. In addition to the best in food storage, they even have an incredible high-tech little wood stove that can boil your water or heat your food 24/7, rain or shine. I urge you to do your own research and taste the difference in Numana's highest quality foods. Better yet, order a starter pack for only $19.95 and prepare to be amazed. Numana's food products have a 25-plus year shelf life. They are GMO-free, contain no preservatives, and are completely American-made. Visit Numana.com and see what you've been missing. That's Numana, Numana.com, Numana.com.
One of the best recommendations that I could give is to keep your immune system strong.
Ty, by the way, is also a spokesperson for one of our clients, Carnivora. And I believe the owners of Carnivora heard you on the program, Ty. Is that how that happened?
Yeah, it's funny, George. You know, you interviewed me for the first time about 4 or 5 years ago. And when we were on that interview, I talked about how my family took Carnivora each day. And the owner, Richard Ostro for Carnivora, contacted me after that and said, hey, I'd love for you to do some commercials for us because you're a believer in the products. And I can say this wholeheartedly. I don't sell Carnivora. I don't make a penny off of the sales of Carnivora. It's just a great product. What's the difference? It's the immune system, so we want to be healthy.
We sure do.
Call 1-866-836-8735. That's 1-866-VENUS-FLY. Or visit Carnivora.com. Carnivora.com. For 15% off, use the promotion code 150FF. That's 150FF.
Oxygen. It's nature's oldest therapy and plays an essential role in destroying viruses, bacteria, mold, yeast, and fungus, and keeping the human body healthy and strong. Now, you can give your body and your immune system a mega boost of disease-fighting oxygen with all-natural Oxy-C. With so many people now leading a sedentary indoor lifestyle, most are in a chronic state of oxygen deprivation, which sets up a perfect environment for disease